feature presentation.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Untitled Movie Conversation. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside, he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric March.
I'm Batman.
Oh, God. I'm Vengeance. Today we are going to talk about our reactions for DC Fandome 2021. Eric, we're back in the dome. We're going to be talking
We're back
about...
in the dome, the Auto Dome.
Oh, God. No one understands that. We're going to talk about
Northern Ontario.
Sure. I apologize. I've apologized on every show so far. My background and everything looks like total garbage because
Matt, you're moving. It's understandable. I mean,
I know,
yes,
it's
you know me.
I'm like
backdrop.
I'm kind of like a perfectionist though, to the point where like I hate that there's like glare on my glasses. I hate the lighting's terrible. You could see like I took down my Pulp Fiction poster that was back here. So like,
yeah,
I tried to take off the command strips that I put on the wall, and I ripped a piece of the wallpaper, or not wallpaper, paint off the wall. So like, it's very depressing in my house right now.
depressing like a Batman movie.
Yeah, but we'll get back to I'm excited to go to the new place and set up whatever my background is going to be for our videos there, because I liked how I had it here with the TV with the lighting in the background and my DVDs or my Blu-rays and stuff, but my hair is awful. But I'm excited about the move, but it has been a lot. So today I'm recording on my 10-year-old MacBook Pro. I still have my new iPhone and microphone and everything, but that's why the background is so depressing. But anyways, good segue, Eric, depressing like a Batman movie, because we are going to be talking about our reactions to the Batman trailer. We're going to talk about Black Adam. We're going to talk about The Flash. We're going to talk about Peacemaker. I think that was all on the movie and TV side of things, right? They showed a bit from Aquaman, some like concept art or some shit, didn't they?
Yeah, and some behind the scenes kind of sizzle reel stuff. But essentially what everybody was waiting for was the new Batman trailer. Yeah. And I waited until, because I was watching some of it as it was being live.
Yeah. I had it on my phone a little bit too, but
I think watching the Batman trailer is great, but watching it on Matt Reeves' 4K channel on Vimeo. Shout out to both Matt Reeves and Barry Jenkins for always posting their trailers on Vimeo, because
they know the compression is better and that it looks way better. Yeah.
Yeah. And watching that trailer multiple times.
Oh God, I've watched it too many times.
I'm very excited.
Too many times.
It does look and sound so much better on Vimeo.
Yeah, it really does. And that's the kind of attention to detail I love about Matt Reeves, that and you said Barry Jenkins, and there's certain filmmakers that you can tell just give a shit about, the marketing and presentation of their movie as much as the actual content of the movie. And like little things like that for nerdy people like us, where it's like, hey, you want like a better, less compressed, like YouTube makes even 4K stuff look like garbage, right? Like, and for our podcast, whatever, it makes sense. But
because you've talked about it on the show before as well, where you download the QuickTime file, right?
The uncompressed, like giant, like 4 GB plus like trailers to watch on my computer.
I downloaded the Dear Evan Hansen trailer. Do I regret it? Maybe.
I love doing that because the YouTube versions are usually trash. The Apple's always had a good compression kind of stuff. So if you go on the Apple trailers website, it's usually pretty good, or on the Apple trailers app on Apple TV. It's usually pretty solid, but the Vimeo, go watch it on Vimeo if you haven't. Even if you don't have like a 4K TV, you can still hit the 4K version or the 1080p version, and it'll still look so much better than the YouTube version. And that trailer, dude, I've watched too many times now. I've just watched it over and over again. I feel like whenever I need a jolt of adrenaline, I just put on the Batman trailer. So this is the second trailer we've gotten. The first kind of one, like the first one, more of a teaser, this giving us a bit more of the story, even though I still don't know what Riddler's doing or Penguin's doing in the movie. But I just love the style of this. Like, I love Matt Reeves as a filmmaker. Like, I think his two Apes movies are absolutely fantastic. And even though they made quite a bit of money and were very well received critically, I still feel like are underwatched and kind of underrated a little bit.
Well, he is, as well as a filmmaker. Like, watching that trailer, you can tell that there are similar constructed images that are in those Ape sequels, but also Let Me In, like the one scene I thought of Let Me In is the car flipping over, where in Let Me In you see Richard Jenkins from in the car, the crash from the point of view,
and then you see the penguin in this, and then it's very similar. And like, I saw some similar stuff from his Apes movies, and like just the cinematography. It's Greg Fraser doing this, right?
Yeah, who also shot Dune.
Yeah, and Rogue One and things like that. Like, just throughout the trailer, there's just so many incredible kind of shots from, different perspectives, or the city in the background of Gotham. And I just think Zoe Kravitz looks amazing as Catwoman, Selena Kyle, like Robert Pattinson, like in the bat suit, looks just fucking awesome. And then you get like that hallway sequence with the machine gun and Batman just taking it and beating the shit out of everyone. And just like, it looks very dark and brooding, like a Batman movie probably should.
Yeah, it's still closer in style to Christopher Nolan, with obvious sort of tones in the David Fincher kind of Seven arena. But again, I think some of the style is very distinctly Matt Reeves, in terms of like, you have a shot of Batman holding a flare, or you have, a close-up of Batman's, cowl in a way that you haven't really seen before. And I think a big part of his approach, and I'm sure he'll probably talk about it more when they're starting to do the press, I almost feel like Skyfall and Roger Deakins cinematography probably played a role in terms of influence on how a Batman movie is shot. Because even though, Wally Pfister's work on the Batman movies is great, and Nolan's direction is solid, even Burton added, this really interesting sort of animation to certain scenes and flourishes that are very present.
Everyone had their own style, even Schumacher too, right? Like,
but it's just interesting to see like this compared to, and again, I'm not trying to be provocative or poke the bear, but you look at this. No, I was going to say even Marvel movies. Like, you look at this and you look at some Marvel movies where there is kind of a consistency and
to
look and feel in some of those films, even though you are getting a director's stamp the further they move away from, phase one. But with this, it kind of looks and feels more tactile than a lot of other comic book movies in general. And it just kind of stood out to me in that way.
It looks like it was shot on film, but it wasn't though, too, right?
No,
like,
but it's the faux film,
Yeah, it is, and it just looks awesome. I totally agree with you. That,
and Michael Giacchino's score, I think that's the thing.
That new Batman theme is so good, dude. It's so good. The bow,
it's great.
Bow, 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 bow. It's so
like, it feels
good.
like he taps into something that Danny Elfman tapped into.
I got my nips are hard right now, even like talking about it.
Joel Schumacher style.
Yeah. My bat nips are hard. Sorry, you were saying something.
But it feels like it taps into the iconic quality that Danny Elfman was able to with the '89 score.
Like, I wouldn't say even Zimmer's scores in the Batman movies are great, but like I don't remember the theme from them. Do you? Like from the Nolan? Like,
no, I remember more.
Oh, it's like I do. Like, I do know the Batman theme from that.
Yeah, other than like the big kind of Brahm kind of thing. I think with Hans Zimmer, in terms of the DC stuff, you remember the Wonder Woman theme more so than anything else now. But yeah, with Nolan's movies, like, they're there, but I think
I do remember the theme, but it kind of becomes...
What eclipsed it though was Inception. Was after, in between the Batman movies, you had literally that iconic Bram that became a thing with the Zimmer all of Hans Zimmer's movies, but also with other films.
Oh, everyone co-opted that. But yeah, what I love is that it obviously feels like it's Nolan adjacent, like still taking that tone of grounded, but still very comic booky, which is what I love. And I love the
Colin Farrell looks like almost more like a Dick Tracy villain.
Oh,
than
totally.
He does,
but
a
like
person.
but he still feels like a real person to me. Like it still feels very comic booky and very Batman. But it doesn't feel like it's, that realm of the supernatural. And maybe he'll incorporate that in it. He's supposed to be doing a trilogy, but like it still feels grounded, but really does still feel like a comic book movie, which I think is really interesting. And
right.
I just can't wait, man. Like, I know we both love Batman. You're wearing a shirt. You have a tattoo. I have many, many Batman stuff. I'm looking at a Batman poster right here as I'm packing stuff. I tweeted out the 35 millimeter trailers I found while packing of The Dark Knight. And Batman is my favorite superhero. And I don't want to shit on the Snyderverse stuff, or maybe I do, but like, it's been we've gotten many iterations of Batman. We just got a lot of Ben Affleck as Batman. And at times I thought Ben Affleck was a fine Batman. I just never thought he got his due as we never really got a solo movie as much as Batman v Superman is more of maybe a Batman movie than a Superman movie, but it all still feels very focused on Superman. So I feel like since Nolan's movies, we haven't really, personally gotten a Batman that I was super, super interested in. And I like that this is its own thing. It has nothing to do with the DCEU, although we will get into Flash in a moment and we'll talk about that. And who the fuck knows what's going to happen after that. Multiverses are very hot right now. I just love that it's its own thing, and I really hope they give him 3 movies to kind of tell his story the way that he wants. And I feel like there's so much potential there, and Robert Pattinson looks awesome. I am curious, and Paul Dano is just the perfect Riddler. I'm curious, why are they obstructing his face?
I think that's probably part of this version of the character, because it does seem to be like, okay,
do you think the whole movie they're going to do that? Or
maybe, or just maybe for what we're seeing so far, because I feel like that moment that we see between the glass, we'll probably see him. But I do kind of feel like part of it is sort of having this character that maybe has no identity, or is kind of, an uprising to sort of, the classic criminals that we've seen in the past. And I just like the idea of this Batman kind of being already established as Batman. Like, it's
even
not
though he's
really
young
an
still,
origin story. Yeah, but the characters are there, and I'm sure there are plenty of Easter eggs and surprises that we are, still going to see as the months, count down to when we watch the movie. But yeah, I just found it to be exciting that it kind of is going back to just a self-contained story, that it's not necessarily reliant on bringing in other characters from the DCEU and just doing its own thing, and just not having to worry about any of that, and just worrying about the world that is already kind of built. And
Batman's world is big enough with its family of characters and villains that I don't necessarily feel like you need to build out this shared universe other than just like a Batman one, really.
Yeah, the one thing that they're not showing much of, which I've heard is a big component of the film, is that, and Matt Reeves has talked about it, is that this is going to be a detective story. That this is, the idea that, it's a film noir or neo-noir.
They are focusing on the brutality and the action stuff.
Yeah, and that's to sell it to a wider audience. Because if you have, Batman, who is a detective, that's kind of always been a selling point of that character,
but we haven't really been
gotten that utilized in movies, any of the movies, for the maybe with a little bit of the Adam West version of Batman,
and even the Keaton stuff, but they're all giant leaps in logic. The Adam West stuff is comically funny, where he'll put together like, oh well, this and this is like,
or like with Bale in The Dark Knight, when like he's trying to recreate the bullet impact in that one scene. I think is like the closest in the Nolan movies, but like a true kind of detective.
But he's supposed to be like Sherlock Holmes a bit, right? Like the world's greatest detective. Like, and
that works for the Riddler, right? Like in terms of bringing him as kind of, I guess, the main kind of villain or the catalyst,
who's like a Zodiac style serial killer, right? Like,
so Ted Cruz. Cruz. Yeah. That would be amazing if it was just revealed it was Ted Cruz as the villain.
And I think that's interesting, and involving like the Waynes and their backstory, which is something that, you know, we got a little bit in Joker, but you know, we haven't gotten much about like the corruption of the Waynes and that they're kind of part of the seediness of Gotham, like in some Batman stuff. That's kind
because
of
they've always been held up as like virtuous and they're like
on a pedestal, right? Like, especially for Bruce. So like, I find it really interesting, which is what it looks like the Riddler is trying to expose here, is that the Waynes were corrupt and they were they were part of the, you know, Gotham being as this shitty crime city that it is. And they were a huge part of that. And I think that's really interesting, Eric, because I think that could involve the Court of Owls, which is what gets my juices going, because like I love the Court of Owls. They're more a recent Batman villain created by Scott.
Talons, right?
Yeah,
is
one of their
like
assassins. Their assassins. But this being this, you know, seedy underbelly of Gotham, where you have that kind of, and it looks like this movie is kind of building on the layers of Gotham, which I think is really interesting too. And like, I could see the Court of Owls and the Riddler being involved there, and that's why they're kind of obstructing his face or his look or something like that. And there were rumors that the Court of Owls might be like, you know, maybe they're going to be that ongoing kind of thing throughout this trilogy. And that's what I would love, of like, if they're kind of revealed at the end being, you know, part of this. And then that's what the overarching arc of these movies, and you sprinkle in the other Batman movies, because that's kind of what the Scott Snyder arc of the Court of Owls did, where you still have the classic Batman villains. Oswald Cobblepot, like the Cobblepot family was, you know, one of the, you know, big families in Gotham, and they were involved with the Waynes. And then the Court of Owls are the ones that are kind of running the show underground, and it's all the big families of Gotham and all the big important people of Gotham, almost like an Illuminati kind of thing. And I think, and they have this like, you know, the Talons are their assassins. That gets in more of the supernatural territory of like their kind of undead zombie people that they bring back to as like as assassins. And then they do also have this like labyrinth that they put Batman in, which is like this giant fucked up maze that they put him in, which I think could just be so cool. And I see that imagery of him going with the flare like underground and stuff like that, and there's all those people following him, which I think is the GCPD, right? But like, yeah, and or you go into the James Gordon Jr. territory, but like, which is another villain I love from the Scott Snyder comics, where Gordon's kid is a serial killer. But I don't think that makes sense in this, but it could.
I think they do give something away in the trailer though that it might be spoilery. Peter Skarsgård is supposed to be in this.
Yeah.
Sarsgaard, pardon me. And he's playing the district attorney. Now, in that first trailer, we see Joker wrapping something around a guy's
Riddler,
head.
sorry.
Riddler, pardon me. Who's kind of almost like a Joker-esque character, the way that we've been talking about him in the Batman. But you see the Riddler wrapping, you know, duct tape or something around his face, and I almost get the feeling that that's going to be the cold open of the film, that the district attorney is taken out early on, and that kind of sets this whole thing into motion. And then at the end of the movie, we're going to have Harvey Dent come in.
Yeah. I could see that, depending, like, I do think that there will be some surprises. Like, I don't think James Gordon Jr., because it's too similar to the Riddler, unless they make him, you know, Jeffrey Wright's kid, which could make sense, but like, potentially, but not really. And then I love Jeffrey Wright as Gordon, even though we only kind of see him in the background in most of it. I do think you're right with the Sarsgaard stuff. And I really hope Court of Owls are involved, because I feel like I would love to see villains we haven't really seen before, right? And like, I think that could be really cool, but then that's a way to still incorporate people like Penguin and Catwoman and Riddler, and, you know, those clown guys look like they're part of Joker's crew, right? Like, I don't want another Joker. Like, I just don't want it.
Right. But you know, we will get another Joker at some point. Like, they'll set that up for either part 2 or part 3. But I would like to see, like, you know, a better version of someone like Mr. Freeze down the line, or to your point, like, there's that character that always keeps coming up that hasn't been done yet, where like you have someone like Hush, right? Where like,
that's another reason. Yeah, you bring up a great point, which is another way I think they might be kind of obscuring his face. And I could see that we've gotten so many iterations of Batman now that I could see them start putting some characters together, right? Like
amalgamations.
Yeah, like where it is the Riddler, but it could also be Hush, right? Or something like that. Because Hush does, like, if you look at how the Riddler's been shown in like promo art, he has like almost like a garbage bag over his face with his glasses or something like that.
And that one shot does look like when he's on the TV, looks like when Joker in the Dark Knight sends out that video of him torturing
even the
one
interrogation
vigilante
room, right? Like like so I
swear to me.
Yeah, it's exactly that scene, right? So like I'm really curious to see like if they kind of know that we've seen so many different iterations of Batman that they can kind of play with it now, and people aren't going to get mad about that, like of going, well, we took these two characters and put them into one. And like I think that could be cool, and that's how they play with your expectations or pull a fast one on you or have some surprises. And I think that could be really cool. But like I love the look of the movie, the use of red and like just the look of Gotham and the oranges and stuff like that. And yeah, it just looks fucking awesome. That score is just incredible. I just want that on repeat. But it looks really good. I'm excited, man. Like
and that was kind of like the highlight of DC Fandome, I think, this year, where, you know, we got sort of a sizzle reel of Andy Muschietti The Flash, which kind of has a voiceover from Michael Keaton. And
never see his face, and you don't see the Batmobile, but
or him wearing the suit again, just from the cowl, from the back of the cowl and the back of the head. Which again, I think that's enough to have me excited for a movie that otherwise I
would not have given a shit about. Yeah,
because I don't care about the Flash whatsoever. But having Michael Keaton come back, that is kind of the main selling point, and that will, you know, have me anticipating, you know, next November, I think, is when it's supposed to come out. But even then, like, it's going to be really interesting because, you know, speaking of now Marvel movies, you know, we've seen, or they, you know, Kevin Feige and Disney made an announcement
got
that
scared of Batman, man.
Well, I think partly it's that, but I also think that they're giving more room.
Oh yeah.
For Spider-Man No Way Home when it comes out in December. And maybe they're also thinking logically as well that it's like, okay, well, we've had so much Marvel within 2021 that they don't want to maybe oversaturate.
And I totally agree that
quickly.
I think it's a mix of being 2 weeks out from the Batman and what you're saying. So I feel like
they got Morbius though in January.
Thank God. 3 weeks after Spider-Man, we get another Spider-Man kind of movie. Yeah, I do think it's a mix of both of those things, which I think is a smart call. Going back to The Flash, I'm totally with you. Would not have given a shit about this movie. But I read all of the Flashpoint event in comics, because that's kind of right when I was starting to get back into comic books, almost 10 plus years ago. And they had the Flashpoint event, which is like, was at the, you know, I started reading, you know, the return of Bruce Wayne because they killed him off and stuff like that. And like that led into this Flashpoint series of
with Thomas Wayne, right?
With Thomas Wayne and Barry Allen going back. And it looks like, you know, the 89 Batman is going to be the Thomas Wayne in this from that story, because they're adapting Flashpoint, which was like a reset point for the DC universe in the comics, which then spun out of the New 52, which was like their reboot of all of their characters, right? And like the Flash was that one character that, you know, changed history, so everything changed and people became younger, and you know, it reset that universe, right? And like and like Martha Wayne was Joker in that universe and stuff like that. So it's going to be really interesting to see, you know, multiverses are hot right now. I think, you know, we have the Spider-Verse to thank for that. And now Marvel's getting into it with Spider-Man and WandaVision and What If and Multiverse of Madness. And now you're seeing DC kind of clean up after, you know, I think we can all say not a failure, but the DCEU didn't really work out. The Snyderverse didn't necessarily work out how there are people who love the Snyderverse, and I understand that. But it didn't really work out.
We live in a society, Matt.
Yeah. It didn't really work out to the plan, right? So I think using Ezra Miller's, Barry Allen to be the guy that resets the DCEU is interesting, to keep everything canon, but still have a reset point where every DC movie we've ever seen is technically part of this multiverse. And you can kind of pick and choose what you want to be in continuity and what you don't want to be in continuity.
So we can ignore Wonder Woman 1984, but we can possibly include Wonder Woman 3, which is going to be happening, which was announced, but that's kind of obvious. Or, you have also Black Adam, Shazam 2, and
Aquaman
2 coming out. And so those movies, I think, will also be kind of a case by case basis of like, okay, well, if they're popular and well liked,
and we want to bring these characters back together, we might do that. But like,
but if they're not, we don't have to.
Which is like
it's cherry picking. Basically.
Yeah, it is, and whatever. I think DC, I've said that they've kind of learned from their mistakes, and they've been doing these one-off movies, whether it's, Joker 2 was kind of rumored, right? Where, Joaquin Phoenix kind of walked back on that and said like, well, I unless we get a good script, like I don't know if that's happening or not, even though people have said that like that's pretty much a go. So it is interesting to see the route that they're taking. I like bringing back Keaton as Batman, even if it's like nostalgia bait and stuff like that. Like, I am curious. He seems like a bigger character in this than I was expecting.
Right. And it like the thing I think I'm hoping for, and I think a lot of people are, is that it will then end up being or going into Batman Beyond or something like that. Too, or right? Even just a third Batman movie with him, like a solo Batman movie with him as like an old Batman. Like, it doesn't even have to necessarily be Batman Beyond.
I would love if you got Burton back and did Batman Beyond. Like, I really, although weirdly, we just talked about the Batman and a lot of imagery in that with the red Batman logo and stuff like that. Like on the emoji that they have on Twitter and on the title sequence. And we never even talked about how dope that title sequence was when he's walking out of the fire with the Batmobile with Penguin.
Again, the score
it's when just, I'm going to watch it again right after we finish this on my TV. And I just, that seems like the Batman Beyond is the red Batman symbol. So it's weird to see, and maybe the reveal.
Well, it's still black though. Like when
he's on the costume and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's based on the two guns or the gun that killed his parents. This is really
right? Cool. That's really.
But dope. When it's like when the color itself in terms of the credits,
and on the promotional material and stuff like that. Either way, another movie with Keaton. But the rumor is that he will be the Batman in the DCEU moving forward, and he will be more of that kind of. Maybe Nick Fury kind of role in the DCEU moving forward. So maybe he's not going to necessarily be, beating the shit out of people anymore, but like he might be the guy, kind of spearheading everything. And then maybe they do bring in a new Terry. What is the Batman Beyond's name? Terry something, right?
Yeah, it's like Terry McGinnis.
Yeah, Terry McGinnis. Yeah, you nailed it, I think. I never really watched Batman Beyond. Wasn't really my thing.
I have the complete Blu-ray collection of it, and I watched maybe like when it was on, maybe like 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah, I never got into it, but I know people love it, so...
Yeah, and I don't mind the idea, but I like the idea as kind of more so just from the point of view of an older Batman having to let go or find new ways to fight crime, given his physical sort of capacities changing. And sort of, again, like when you look at his character compared to Superman or Wonder Woman or Aquaman, he's a human being. So he's going to have certain limitations, and especially during a lifespan, and seeing truly an older Batman. It's just funny that like we're replacing the youthful Ben Affleck with the
50-year-old Ben Affleck with the 70.
He's 70 or 69.
Nice.
Batman. But again, I'm excited because Michael Keaton seems to be engaged by it all, and if he's kind of interested in coming back and collecting a paycheck but also having fun with the role, then what's not to love? So
yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's why I'm most excited too. And like, I don't know whether you bring Burton back or you bring in a new director or something. If you do.
Burton, I think, would do it just where he is right now.
I
like
agree.
He would come back and do it, even though he's really kind of set up shop at Disney for the last decade or so now. So
yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
He's not the auteur that he was once.
No, but you bring the band back
called.
together, and I feel like that's a popular thing right now too. Is like I could see
you get Danny
happening.
Elfman, you get Tim Burton.
I feel like you could do that, and I would be totally down for that. Or you bring in someone new and you make it a little bit more modern, and you don't really have that Tim Burton-esque feel. Like, but we'll see. I'm excited for the Flash. I like that there was like 2 Ezra Millers at the end, 2 Barry Allens. Like one, there's if you look at the what's it called, the Instagram for the director, what's his name,
Andy Muschietti,
yeah. One of the Flashes like has the Michael Keaton Batman suit that he spray painted red and put like a lightning bolt, so it's like the Barry Allen in the 89 universe, I guess, like kind of stole some stuff from Batman and like made his own suit and stuff like that. So I think that's really interesting, of introducing some other DC characters that we didn't necessarily see in that Burton verse, that
right, and just filling in some of like, again, like I'm not always the biggest fan of exposition or backstory, but it is intriguing to think like, okay, what has the 89 Batman been up to
for 30 years?
For 30 years, and like even just references to like maybe Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman Selena Kyle being still around because she survived obviously in Batman Returns, and like maybe there'll be references to even what Burton was going to do with his version of Batman Forever and how that was going to play out, and so I'm just curious to see like how some of that will be maybe incorporated, or maybe even we'll get like a reference to like even Billy D. Williams's version of Two-Face.
Yeah, I think all of that could be cool. So that's I never thought I'd be looking forward to the Flash, but here we are. And then finally, like the last couple of things we touched on that they showed a little bit from, they announced Wonder Woman 3. Is Patty Jenkins coming
Jenkins
back?
I think is directing it. I think she said that she'd complete the trilogy because she's also working on Rogue Squadron, the Star Wars movie.
So what's coming first? Like,
that's a good question. I don't know. It seems like right now, in terms of Star Wars movies, that has kind of been put on the back burner, with I think Taika Waititi kind of maybe being first up
Love and
with
Thunder.
With that movie. But then again, I mean, he's also got an interesting plate right now with both Thor Love and Thunder, and then Next Goal Wins,
if that ever comes out, like
because of Armie Hammer being in it. So I wouldn't be surprised. It's like, okay, it's not necessarily going to be another trilogy, but maybe we want a standalone film that is kind of a more universal film than being specifically based on like one sort of section of the Star Wars universe. So I could see Rogue Squadron maybe being second or third after a new kind of main sort of line Star Wars film.
Black Adam literally
I'm excited for the idea of Dwayne Johnson playing an anti-hero again. Even though I don't like Doom, I do like the fact that he played kind of the villain of the piece of that movie, and
The Rock's a good asshole, like
and Jean-Claude Serra, like even though I didn't love Jungle Cruise, I think he is a good, interesting, vulgar auteur filmmaker.
I agree, and you can tell that they obviously liked working with one another. So
and I also keep laughing at the Pierce Brosnan EPK press kit of Dr. Fate being like, "I've worked on Bond movies, but this is
the most extraordinary,
says Dr. Fate."
It just doesn't really do much for me. I didn't care about the Shazam movie that much, so I like The Rock, obviously. Huge wrestling fan. He was one of my favorites, and like I think he's a charismatic guy, and he seems like he really wants to do this and wants it to be great. But even that little sequence that they showed, I'm like, I like. He said Jamais Colette Sarah, so maybe we've been saying it wrong this whole time. But
or maybe The Rock just renamed him.
Maybe
Jamais.
He's like Jamais Colette Sarah. I like him too, so I'm curious, but it didn't really do much for me. And then leading into Peacemaker, which is obviously a sequel to the Suicide Squad, James Gunn coming back to write and direct, write all of them, but I think direct some of the episodes. They showed a trailer for Peacemaker, which will be a show on HBO Max. I'm assuming it will be on Crave here in Canada. That's just me assuming, which is most of the HBO Max original stuff goes to Crave here. I felt very torn on this trailer because like it felt very cheap looking, like it looked like a TV show.
Well, it looks like what you'd expect a James Gunn series to be like if it were pre Guardians of the Galaxy, like in like you can tell porn. Again, like his his trauma background is very, you know, prevalent in those scenes.
Yeah, and I don't think all of the comedy worked. Like, of course, I love seeing John Cena dance around in his undies and like and just look like an action figure. Like he's just got the weirdest looking body that's very impressive, but he does look like an action figure. And
it's very unsettling.
It kind of is.
I don't want to body shame him either. It's just like he looks like a kid or like a normal person that was like sort of photoshopped or enhanced,
and but it's his actual body. And he looks great, don't get me wrong. I wish I looked like a flabby moron, but like it's impressive, but almost too impressive. Like it's like wow. And then some of the humor it didn't really land with me, and I just felt like it was very awkward the whole trailer. Like there was the tone and the way that it sounded, like the sound mix and the way that it looked really cheap, that I was just like, okay, Peacemaker's costume already looked cheap in the Suicide Squad, but I think, you know, that's sort of intentional. And then the rest of it just kind of looks cheap. And I don't know if I need like 9 hours of this, but you know, I'll give it a shot. And it'll hopefully
give it a dead shot.
Yeah, it'll hopefully just be kind of fun, but
I think that's all you can really hope for with something like this. Like I don't think it's gonna be the next Ted Lasso where like your expectations are kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work being what it's based on, and then it completely surprises you. Like I think this is going to work as, if it works, it'll be just a kind of fun half an hour distraction in, you know, a week-to-week basis. Like it's not going to be something
they probably are 30-minute episodes, right?
Yeah, it's not going to redefine, you know, the DC world in terms of it's not going to be on the same footing I think as like, you know, a lot of the Marvel series right now, you know.
Yeah. And even like we're getting spin-offs from the Batman, right? We're getting the GCPD show on HBO Max,
and then Batgirl as well, which, you know, like
that they showed a little bit of that too, right?
Yeah, and it had the directors of Bad Boys for Life kind of talking about it.
Which universe is that in?
Is it Hodson? I think it's in the Snyder universe because J.K. Simmons is in it playing Gordon.
Yeah, okay.
Or a version of that. I don't know if it's still going to be, you know, slow motion heavy in terms of, you know, or filled with melancholy music.
And
but
it's a movie, right?
Simmons
but an HBO Max movie, or
yes,
is it a series?
Yeah.
No, it's a movie.
I think it's a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's HBO Max. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I saw the concept art, and then they had a little clip from the woman who's playing Batgirl. But overall, you know, obviously the Batman is the standout, and I think the Flash stuff is quite interesting. But you know, DC's kind of, you know, I feel like I've said this since they started making, you know, polls on let's get away from having to do this Justice League, like we need to be the MCU and just do our own thing. And kind of have these one-off movies or TV shows or things like that could be in continuity, but let's not, like, you know, that's what's kind of bogged down comics for so many years, is continuity, right? And yeah, I love the MCU because it's all interconnected and there is a continuity that they stick to, but you don't want everything to be that, especially like very forced. So I feel like sometimes,
well, or yeah, like to your point, like it's rushed. Like the idea that Marvel, like kind of, again, Marvel didn't maybe necessarily have the continuity all planned out because, you know, rights to certain characters weren't available and things like that. So you can't.
They had the Avengers thing planned out, right? But
yeah,
like that was it.
But like you look at what DC was doing and how they kind of rushed into what would become, you know,
the Snyderverse,
Joss Whedon's Justice League.
Yeah.
It just kind of felt like it was unceremonious. It wasn't really an event film, and you know, it wasn't earned because it was kind of like, oh, we have these characters that some of which we haven't even given their own movies yet to.
Let's introduce 6 different people in this movie and then like make you care.
Yeah, and then you hear like the behind the scenes stuff as well in terms of how certain actors were treated, and like
obviously it's kind of worked out for them because Aquaman's successful, Wonder Woman's successful, Flash.
We'll tell that to Cyborg, Matt.
Yeah, that's the thing. Poor Cyborg, but yeah, I like that, you know, with even Todd Phillips' Joker, however you feel about that movie, I feel like was a kind of a turning point, and you know, and Birds of Prey even, and you know, when they started going, you know, fuck it, do what you want, make it R-rated, have it be in continuity, have it not be in continuity, have part of it be in continuity, like who
just make it something that we can compete against Marvel.
Just make an entertaining movie, which I feel like was their mandate, where they're like,
well, the Suicide Squad is I think the perfect example of that, where like that movie to me is so much fun and goofy and over the top, but it kind of is the epitome of what the original film should have been. And it didn't have the interference or influence of the studio saying we have to make it more like Guardians of the Galaxy.
No,
they didn't also have the obnoxiousness of David Ayer, you know, directing a movie like that.
It feels like they just go, listen, you don't necessarily have carte blanche, but you can pretty much do what you want.
You mean Cate Blanchett?
You can just make us an entertaining movie, and we'll kind of stay out of your way. Like there are certain things you can or cannot do with certain characters. I'm assuming, but for the most part, you know, James Gunn has talked about that with the Suicide Squad, where they were like, he's like, this is the least interference I've ever had on a movie, where, you know, the studio they got to a point where I feel like they're like, oh, fuck it, just do whatever you want, like with these movies, and you just make us a good movie that people will want to see. And, you know, sometimes that, you know, works, and I feel like it has been working for them. And, you know, the freedom that they've given directors, and that continuity doesn't necessarily have to be the be all end all, is a good thing. And that's why we're getting the Batman from Matt Reeves. That's why we're getting movies that are sort of in the DCU, sort of not. And that's why we're getting movies that are in their own universes. And, you know,
they're playing fast and loose. Like that's kind of like what this sort of shared universe is compared to the structure and the mechanics and the well-oiled machine that is the
Marvel,
MCU.
Yeah. You got to do your own thing, right? Like you got to,
And I just laugh thinking that like we continually shit on, I mean, it's a terrible movie, but like Suicide Squad still being an Oscar winner, and then there's going to be like a day where like Turner Classic Movies, when they have their like, you know, 31 days
best
to
special
Oscars,
effects,
will have best hair and makeup will have to play Suicide Squad
because it's like hair and makeup month on Turner Classic Movies. They're like, here's the 26th. When did it even come out? 16?
I think it was 2015 or 16.
Yeah. What an awful movie. Anyways, DC Fandome was fun, and I'm very, very excited for the Batman. It's not too far away. March 4th.
Yeah, March is like when you think about like that, we're as we're recording this, we're almost at November.
How do you feel of it being in March? Do you think it gets punted again?
You know what? I actually thought that they were going to announce that it was going to be punted or moved to the summer during the DC Fandome. So if they didn't do it then, I don't think they're going to do it at all. I think it's going to stay in March. And I think part of it is maybe Matt Reeves doesn't want to sit on it anymore, and they just kind of want to release it. And they're also like, this is another thing that we should mention, is that this isn't going to be on HBO Max.
Warner
in the US.
backtracked on that, but it's a 45-day window before HBO Max now, I think. So.
Right. So it is still going to be theatrical first.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I think that's also another thing where it's like, okay, I want to get this out, you know, as soon as I can now, but at the same time, I don't want to be a part of that deal where, everything that they're releasing.
I think that's why they punted it to next year for sure.
Right. But I think the early release is almost like Warner Brothers maybe are also kind of thinking to themselves, well, what if Dune doesn't do that well in North America? We need something that's going to be, I mean, the Matrix movie probably will do well, but even that is still kind of somewhat niche. But Batman is one of their biggest IPs, and it's kind of like,
I think this does $100 million.
Oh yeah. I think that this movie will be one of the most successful films of next year in terms of
even if it comes out in March. I think
they could release it in January, Matt, and I think it would do well. I mean,
at one point it was February, wasn't it? Because wasn't it October, then February, then November? Yeah. Now
they've moved it so many times. I mean, it's like the Bond, it's like No Time to Die. It's like any of these films where it's like oh, they the joke is it's been moved to 2 months from now, 5 months from now, and then next year. And like they could release this in January and it would probably still make $100 million. I mean, you look at
opening
how
weekend,
even though it was in the before times, Bad Boys for Life did that and proved that a film that has an audience and an interest will do well no matter when.
I don't think it never. I don't think people are like, oh, I only go see movies. If anything, in the winter kind of makes sense because it's cold and you don't want to do things outside. Like,
it's more of an industry kind of thing where like that's has been coming up a lot with the Scream movie coming out in January, where industry and film critics always have dubbed both the end of August into the beginning of September, but also specifically January is the dumping ground for films that they couldn't really sell any other time of the year, that they can kind of basically sweep under the rug and just kind of be like, okay, this is the crap that we've been holding that we don't know what to do.
But I don't think summer movie season exists anymore. I feel like it's just mostly year round.
Well, especially now. I don't think other than just the seasons being the season, I think in this pandemic, one of the big things that's changed is the idea of the summer blockbuster versus
the blockbuster.
The blockbuster. And even with like some prestigious fare, like, you're getting stuff that's sprinkled out throughout the year. Like even, as we're talking about Eternals coming up, in November, that's still like you could release that movie in the summer and like in the before times, and it would be considered fine, and you can still release it in the fall. I mean, Aquaman was released in December, and look how well that movie did. And
Spider-Man's going to be 3 days before Christmas, right?
Yeah, so. And I think that movie is going to be really interesting in terms of how it does, because I think that might be a film that makes 100 million or more opening weekend. If Venom: Let There Be Carnage is doing as well as it is, I think Spider-Man
could do the biggest that we've seen since, for a while, I think.
Yeah.
Like, especially if they
pre-pandemic numbers.
If they, do you think here, we're talking about DC Fandome, but now we're talking Marvel, but we're just talking about release dates
and superhero comic book movies in general. Right. So
I'm curious, the Spider-Man versus Batman, my two favorite superheroes. Spider-Man, I think if they show Toby and Andrew in a trailer before the movie, it does obscene amount of money the opening weekend. And I think even if they don't, and it kind of comes out that, the word of mouth, I think it'll do crazy business. But yeah, I think Batman and Spider-Man are really, I think they've always been the two superheroes that, I feel like the cultural zeitgeist have been at the
They're
top.
Almost guaranteed. They're, even if the movies are bad, even if there are films that are associated with them, because you look at, like, even though we don't like Suicide Squad was a huge hit, and part of it was selling it on the fact that Ben Affleck's Batman was in it, and you have Joker, characters from Harley Quinn and the Joker, and so the adjacent characters that are a part of his universe, even with the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, like
it also
and with Spider-Man again, with Venom, Venom being a part.
That's what I'm saying, man.
And I think even Morbius will do better than what we're probably thinking.
I know,
which makes it even worse that Jared Leto is like so successful with both Suicide Squad and Morbius.
It will, man, and I feel like it's just the Spider-Man and Batman factor. So like it's
like if you did, like, I think more one of the biggest tests in terms of like Marvel's success as their own brand was something like Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that
Eternals will be so fascinating to see, actually.
Eternals will do well, but if Eternals was released in that second phase, I think that would have been more of a test. But because Marvel is so established now,
you just got to put Marvel Studios on it and it'll do
exactly.
Well, right?
Yeah, and again, like I think for Marvel, that kind of like that tipping point was Guardians of the Galaxy.
I agree,
because if they could do it with characters that nobody cared about, they could do it with anything.
Yeah,
all you need is the continuity.
I mean, if Batman can survive after the Schumacher movies, then like
and almost destroying comic book films in general,
like I feel like Batman will do really, really well. And I think Kevin Feige moving and Disney moving those Marvel movies is kind of like, do we want to come out 2 weeks after the Batman? Like I do agree that it's a lot of what you were saying as well, but it's interesting timing being, a couple days after DC Fandome, the Monday right after people saw that Batman trailer and went apeshit for it.
I mean, Marvel is basically a Gotham City villain. When they saw the bat signal, they feared what was coming.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you all for listening. Please go check out. We have some reviews up right now that you guys can check out. Our most recent reviews for Halloween Kills and Mass, you guys can check out. We don't have a main podcast this week. This is kind of taking the place of that here on Untitled Movie Conversations, because I am in the process of moving, hence the very awful, shadowy, greasy background that I got going on.
It's like you're living in a dank bat cave.
Check out all of our content over on YouTube. Just search Untitled Movie Podcast. You'll find us over there on the Untitled YouTube channel. If you want it in video format, if you are more of a podcast in audio form person, you can go on podcast services and search for Untitled Movie Podcast, Untitled Movie Reviews, and Untitled Movie Conversations for all of our shows. They are packaged together over on Apple Podcasts, but you can find them on any podcast service. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com, and you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Martin. You can find more of my video reviews at rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time,
I'm Vengeance.